This eventually becomes something.
That's great. I'm glad you're there. Pete Brady's the interim.
His term is going to be 2 years.
I know him. He's wonderful.
But if you can you go to the state? Sometimes they have those unclaimed property. Okay. I don't know. There's nothing like that. We know.
That's great. I'm glad Ricky's over there. He did?
We'll see.
That's great.
Yeah, I like Peter a lot. He's done a great job. Yes. It'll be 2 years. No, he's already retired. That's what I said. He could come back for 2 years as an interim.
Oh, that's how that works?
Yeah.
Piece of property and tractor trailer.
You're on? Who?
I texted Heather.
Good evening, everybody. Please stand for a salute to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The Borough of Seabright, in compliance with the Open Public Meetings Act, has provided adequate notice of time, date, and location of this meeting. The Asbury Park Press, the Link News on January 19th, 2021, filed notice on the Borough Clerk, with the Borough Clerk, and posted notice in the Borough office on the Borough website. This meeting is open to the public, and everybody is welcome. We have the roll call, please.
Ms. Bills?
President.
Mr. Cashmore?
Here.
Chairman Cunningham?
Here.
Ms. Julio?
Here.
Vice Chairman DeSalle?
Yeah.
Ms. Gorman? Mayor Kelly? Councilman Lexstein? Mr. Schwartz?
Thank you. On to the meeting minutes from 10/12/21. Discussion for...
No, I'll approve those, there's nothing to them.
There wasn't much going on that day. Still got to go through it. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. On to new application from Scott Hall and Ingrid Fuson Hall.
Good evening.
Welcome.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the Planning Board. My name is Brad Batcha. I'm the attorney for Scott and Ingrid Hall. I represented when they bought a home here last year, and now we're here tonight because they're seeking to renovate and raise the home in its existing location, and there are 2 bulk setback variances that are needed. So with me tonight I have my client, Scott Hall, to my right, and we also have Ed O'Neill from Some Architects who will explain the project to the board.
Thank you. Let's
Just for, I was just going to say, just for purposes of the record, please note that we have reviewed the notice. The notice is deemed acceptable and the board can accept jurisdiction.
Thank you.
You will also note for the record that Heather Gorman's arrived.
Okay.
You have the floor, sir.
Thank you, sir. I'd just like to introduce my client, Scott Hall, have him sworn in so he can just explain what his vision is for this project to the board.
Mr. Hall, can you raise your right hand, please? Do you swear to tell the truth and nothing but the truth for purposes of this application, sir?
I do.
Can you please state your name and your address for the record?
Scott Hall, I currently live at 58 Pierpont Street in Brooklyn Heights.
I'm sorry, 58.
58 Pierpont, Brooklyn Heights, New York.
Thank you.
Thank you for.
Yes, Scott, you can just explain to the board your...
Sure. So our plan is we have 2 young girls, a 5 and a 9-year-old. We actually our marriage used to come to Seabright, loved the town, and rented here. We're very lucky to purchased a house about a year ago. That house is in an old shape, and we're really hopeful that we can remove the house and build it in its existing frame, which Andy Brad will explain more, and make it an enjoyable house for our family on the Sea Bright Shore.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Hall. Next, I'd like to bring up our architect, Ed O'Neill, who I believe has testified before this board, but would like to have him qualified as an expert, both as an architect and a planner.
Good evening, sir.
Do you swear to tell the truth, nothing but the truth, the purpose of this application, sir?
I know.
And can you please state your name and your qualifications for the record?
Edward W. O'Neill Jr., SON Architects, 500 Street, Red Bank. I have licenses in both architecture and planning in New Jersey. I carry bachelor's and master's degrees in both architecture and planning. And I'm currently and still the head of the architecture program for Cook.
You've testified before boards before?
Yes, and I have testified for this board, but it was a while ago.
Without any objection from the board, we'll accept your qualifications.
Thank you. Okay, so I think the project narrative, and if you don't mind, I'm going to say it. The idea is to basically construct a new house on the footprint of the old house, using the old foundation. The problem with the house now is built in the 1940s, and it's in bad condition. It can't be occupied presently. Even if Ingrid and Scott were to renovate the building to make it livable, it will exceed the 50% threshold of the assessed value of the building, and therefore have to be raised. So it's a foregone conclusion that the building has to be raised. It's my professional opinion that the condition of the building is such that if they raise it, I think it will fall. I think that, for instance, there's no sheathing on the house. You know, all the wood studs just have a siding nailed to them. It has no lateral stability. It's not in good shape. It's not in good shape at all. There's lots of the buildings exposed to view on one side. So the thought was, well, if we use this existing footprint, it has a partial basement and crawl space. What we're proposing to do is to fill the basement so that it meets the flood area guidelines, raise the house up. I think it's about 4 feet. Use that as just crawl space. There wouldn't be anything down there. And then build a new 2-story house on top of it with a small addition in the front, which is about 162 square feet, which would meet the setback of 25 feet. And to add this area here to the footprint, which would be the master bedroom, with a deck to create a carport, which would replace the existing detached garage, which is almost on the edge of the property line.
That'll be removed.
When you keep using the term raise, actually physically raise it or demolish it, raise it?
Both. Well, so we'll have to physically demolish it and then raise the foundation.
Okay, so you're taking the existing house down and you're demolishing it, not, okay, the raise has a different.
Yeah, you're right, absolutely right. You're right. Sorry for the confusion there.
You're going to reuse the existing foundation?
Yes. We've inspected it, we find the existing foundation is fine, but again, it'll have to be raised up because the floor of the house as it is below the flood line.
And the chair had a question about the garage, which exists sort of in the line, that's going to be removed, correct?
Yeah, the garage is removed. So underneath the deck in the back will be a carport for parking as well as a space that's not under the carport.
Open sides?
The 15-foot setback. I'm sorry?
With the open sides in front?
Yes. It'll be closed in the, well, this is the side also, but it'll be open to the rear and front. So this is Ocean Avenue, and this is Willow Lake. Now, the problem we have from a planning standpoint is, and so if I look at that, the house is presently 2,430 square feet. The new house will be 3,530 square feet. Most of that square footage, additional about 1,100 square feet of square footage is in the finished attic. So the finished attic here, the finished attic here will add to that square footage, but not to the overall bulk of the building. We meet the building coverage guidelines. It's 50% is required, 37% exists, 41% is proposed. So we're a little more than what's there, but we're 9% under.
Did you mean not to the overall footprint of the building or bulk of the building?
Both.
There's an existing home there, a full-size home that's.
Well, not once you take it down.
I'm just comparing old to new.
We're not seeking any height variances. It's very similar in size and shape to what's existing. Is that fair?
Yes, and actually, we reduced the lot coverage by 3%. With this.
On the subject of height variance, you have a narrow lot, it's supposed to be reduced by a certain percentage. I understand your maximum height allowable is 33 feet, you put it as 35.
Well, that was the original application, but Ed can speak to it. The plans were revised, so they
Okay.
now adhere to the lot,
Yeah.
the height requirement.
Yes, we've removed that by changing the pitch of the roof slightly, so that we will meet the requirement for height. So we don't seek a height variance. So the variances we seek are for 2 setbacks.
Which presently exist in today's
So if we're using the existing foundation, those 2 foundations violate the setbacks. Now, I have a kind of a crazy looking board here, which is this one. And that's the property with nothing on it. So
Need to mark.
if you take,
Do you want to
Mr.
mark-
O'Neill, I was gonna say we need to mark that, and I don't know, we didn't really reference your little house there, but we can mark that as
no,
well.
that's what
You can mark that as Exhibit A1, if you will, please.
A1.
And can you describe exactly, like, give me the,
it's a site analysis diagram.
is there a date on it?
The date is 7/15/21.
7/15, I'm sorry,
21.
21. And you
Now, what
prepared
that-
that?
I'm sorry?
You prepared that?
Yes, we did.
Awesome, thank you.
And what that shows is, this is the property outlined in the kind of bluish line. And if you take the setbacks, which are 8 feet from the sideline, 25 feet from the front, 15 feet from the back, and because it's on a corner, the interpretation is it has 2 front yards. So if you take a 25-foot setback from Willow Way, the buildable area is 77 feet by 2 feet. So the hardship is, based on planning law, the hardship is that because of reason of an exceptionally narrow lot, even though the lot is large enough for the zone, the building is rendered, the property is rendered unbuildable because of those regulations. And then further, if you look at the area around the building, and you look at some of the other houses that are on the corner, nobody's that far. But we would
I'm
want
going to submit those.
We're gonna see,
No,
we're
this
gonna
is
have to mark those as
a-
well.
Yeah.
Here, you can do it A2, and then how many photos are there?
And
well, I had one for everybody, I made 15.
Oh, okay, all right.
I wasn't sure how many.
It's one photo.
One photo that,
Copied a
okay,
lot.
no, you were.
This one will be in the.
That's fine, okay.
and can you describe the photo?
And what it is, it's simply a Google map, portion of the Google map around the existing property, and they say the 2 or 3 blocks to the north and south, which I felt was a large enough capture area to show what the existing corner lots and how they were developed. And frankly, none of them have a 25-foot setback. They're all regular setbacks, 70, 4, that sort of thing. They're not,
They're more than 25.
well, no, they're less than 25. Nobody's at 25. The houses are much closer to the street.
On what? On the side of the house, which would be a front yard, and
Right, because on a corner, it's 2 trucks.
like off of Ocean Avenue, you're more than 20, you're 25.
Yes. Yes, this is the Willow Way setback. That's the issue. So,
It's consistent with the neighborhood.
the argument is, if you start talking about positive and negative criteria, it's consistent with the neighborhood as one of the measures of justifying the variance. Let's see.
I assume that's what you were talking about.
Yes. Cutting to the chase. There's another variance justification, which is by reason of extraordinary and exceptional situation, uniquely affecting a specific piece of property that the variance is justified, and one would be the Seabright's interpretation of the corner lot, which obviously at one time was not that interpretation, and the whole neighborhood was built that way. So there's a new interpretation, and that new interpretation again renders the project, or any project on the site unbuildable. So those are 2 reasons that are justification for granting variance. If you look at the positive criteria of granting the variances, you're upgrading a dilapidated truck. Period. And that makes the neighborhood better. There's a reduction in block coverage. It is small, but there is a reduction. and you're removing a detached garage, which is very, very close to the rear and side property line. The negative criteria, we have 2 pre-existing setback variances, and we conform with all the other zoning standards, and therefore, my opinion is the proposal is in keeping with the standards of the zoning plan.
What is the height of the house?
33.
It's 33? Because your plans still say 35.
Well, that's what was submitted within the 10-day window.
Okay. So you're going to revise the plans? to
Yes,
33?
and we can supply that to the board immediately as well.
So that'd be a condition of approval that the plans are revised?
You're gonna, what other variances are you gonna need? You take them all?
No.
It's this variance, this setback,
Which is existing.
and this one, which is also existing. Because if you.
So you're just expanding a non-conforming use then?
Yeah,
But I also noticed you plan on parking a car in the backyard.
Yes.
You're not allowed to park cars in setbacks.
Well, there's room for 2 cars underneath the deck without the setback. There is room under here for 2 cars.
I only saw one on the plan.
Well, that's what we're showing.
But not side by side?
Yes, one here and one here.
Yeah.
It's over 22 feet.
Okay.
So a parking space is 9 feet wide.
9 by 18.
Yeah, this is more than, this is 22 feet. So
2 cars that are
on
on the overhead.
And the entrance is from Ocean Avenue.
No, the entrance is from the
Will Way, okay. Just wanted to clarify.
No, there's no entrance to it.
Yeah.
The plan shows a deck.
Yes, that's what this is here.
So that car will be underneath that deck?
Can you see this?
Both cars
He looked
will be
over, he wants to bring it over.
No, I can see it. I just, the plan's a little deceiving because you showed a car in the setback and then you showed one underneath and then a deck in place where the second would go.
The mistake was putting the car in the setback. The car should be underneath the deck.
And it'll fit under the deck. Okay.
Yes. So, again, to the negative criteria, we will also adhere to the flood zone regulations, which is a positive. And, again, we talked about the neighborhood and the fact that it would be consistent with the row house of the neighborhood. And I think that's, I mean, I can go through what's in the floor plan if you'd like, but I'm not sure whether that's germane to the conversation, but I'm going to
The other issue is, in this town, is very nervous about putting your utilities in your setback, your air conditioning systems and such.
No,
So they have to testify that they will not. It's not marked on the plan.
See, the plans are, like, I'm sorry, going to Dave's point before, the plans are a little bit confusing because, and you said originally that only one car was going to be underneath the deck and the other one was going to park on the outside of it when you initially testified.
Then that was a mistake on my part.
Yeah, and that's how it's shown on the plans, actually.
No,
It's shown on the plans as only one car being underneath the deck.
No, again, if you go to the floor plan, and it's not shown that way, but these 2 cars will fit in this space.
If you look at your south elevation picture, it doesn't look like a car will fit underneath that deck.
Yeah, it doesn't look like it's me either. It looks like it's a really, really tight fit.
We're just going to reference the floor plan as A3, just for purposes of identification.
Dave, do you have these plans?
I have them in front of me. I did not review
I
it, but
understand.
I have a copy here.
But
Yeah.
does that, to me, it does, I mean, I agree with Dave to say.
Well, it's a
that doesn't look like-
representation of a car. Can you tell us what the inside dimension is from the post?
Dave, go to south elevation, go to the next page, south elevation. C200.
Right. It shows it filling the space.
You can't fit a car underneath that deck, can you? Look at it.
I don't know how you're fitting the second car in there without hitting the side of the deck.
So the deck is up in the air.
Yeah,
But the pillars are down.
Well, yeah, no, here, but this distance,
I think.
see the visual on the page?
Yeah, I do. I mean, again, it's a visual, so let's see what the distance actually is.
Well, this is fine. The roof of the car is on the
yeah, like that, so
It's doing something. I'm not sure what. Yeah.
Dave, you think the width is fine, that it can fit 2 cars easily?
It says 19 feet.
Okay.
Yeah, he testified to it.
Well, the car distance from there to the deck is 16 foot.
So the width from east to west would be 18 feet, 16 feet?
Yeah. So the deck is down.
Which would be like 2 8-foot spaces.
Right.
It's tight.
But we could,
It's not our ordinance.
The plan shows the whole section all the way up to the house, underneath the deck is 19.
Yeah. Right there.
How can that be 18 to the deck? Impossible.
There's a post.
Yeah, it just seems like, you might be able, like Dave says, you might be able to fit 2 cars in these areas, really squeeze them in, but no one's gonna do that, okay? So let's try to operate in reality, and, they're gonna park exactly where you have them, because that's what makes sense.
So we can adjust the entry deck to make the 2 spaces work.
I personally,
Well, you would have to go further into the setback to do it.
No, we'll make the deck small. The deck down here, not the deck on top.
The lower deck, not the upper deck.
Right, the lower deck, which is the way to get, because remember, the house is up in the air.
But look
So
at your,
it's not that great.
if you look at your first floor plan, the dimension in the back of the garage shows 19 feet total distance. How can it be, if you
So that's why
reduce,
I'm trying to scale with
if you reduce the deck by 5 or 6 feet,
You'd have to effectively.
You would need all 19 feet.
Well, the deck was 3 feet, which is the walkable deck, then you
so what's, the deck's how long? Wide?
Well, right now, it's 5 feet, if you reduce it to 3 feet,
So 3 from 19 is,
6 feet.
that's not a legal parking space.
I mean, that would be talking about a municipal parking space opposed to a residential.
Can you make it 8 feet wide times 2?
I think so.
I mean, I'm sorry, 9 feet wide times 2?
I think so.
18?
It'll just be an adjustment.
That would give you the width, Dave. 9 times 2 is 18.
Or you ask for a parking in a setback.
Well,
Yeah, well, I was just,
Mr. Chairman, if I
Well, I
have,
don't know, I mean, Mr. Lexi said he can't park this.
Mr. Chairman,
Well, I didn't say, Dave said that, but I wasn't, honestly, I wasn't aware.
and I personally, I don't know that I have a problem with it, but.
No, I don't, but the plans have to be accurate.
Yes, no, that's what my concern is.
If you're going to park in a setback, then ask for a variance for parking in a
That would be
setback.
all
Would
right.
they have had the notice for that separately, or can that be?
That would be all right.
he just suggested that would be their preference.
Yeah, they can amend their application as they can't hear it, another part of the notice process, and it's not a significant change from the application.
Right, and that's what the reality, I don't have an issue with it either, it's just that's what the reality is going to be, that's where they're going to park.
And they would be parking.
Right, really.
So we just give them the variance now and be done with it, rather than have someone complain later that they did
And
something.
that would be our preference. Our preference would be.
Mark, I think that providing that second space, doing whatever alterations have to be done to the deck, either by width or height, to provide 2 spaces under the house and be conforming, they can still ask for parking in the setback, but they would need 2 houses, 2 spaces under the house, and then realistically, someone's gonna park in that other space anyway.
We're not gonna get 2 spaces underneath that.
You can't make architectural adjustments to get 2 spaces under the
But they
house.
have to require 2 parking spaces, so if they give a variance for the second one, that solves the problem. But I've lived in Seabright long enough to know that parking is a serious situation. You want every space you can find.
So, I mean, I think we would make the modifications, the way he presented it was 2 cars, one going under the deck, to have that space there, so that we wouldn't be using that area, but it does look like the deck needs to come in.
So we'll
High enough for an SUV.
Allow 2 cars.
And you can do that comfortably.
Yeah. It'll take a revision.
I want to tell you, in my opinion, I don't think it's necessary, but if you think you can, what do you all think? Do you all care? I got the impression you don't care.
I don't know.
There's a garage.
I don't care either, but it has to be correct on the plan.
So there, why wouldn't you
be prepared and have that extra space and ask for the variance.
For the 9-year-old.
Yes, my suggestion would be to do both.
He said that was their preference.
Is that required to renotice for that? Or can
No, you can amend it on the record. It doesn't
You can amend it on the
significantly
record for that.
affect your application, and it's part of your notice as you,
Wanna make sure.
any other variances
Yeah,
deemed
that's
necessary
it.
by the board.
Yeah.
What are we asking them to do? I mean, my feeling is that it can stay the way it is with only one car underneath the deck. And I don't care if the other cars park outside the deck.
Just ask for a.
Just ask for variance.
In a setback.
In the setback.
Yeah.
Whatever they do with it is their decision.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's fine, so we'd like to.
So you're going to
formally
amend your
the plan
record.
To request the parking variance and the setback variance.
Yeah.
As discussed.
Mr. Chairman, I didn't look at this application, but after they do the revisions, if it comes back to me, Monica can write the resolution. If it's got the 3 or 4 items that we're talking about tonight in it, I can just check it off and very quickly make sure that it's the right set of changes.
So we're allowing,
That's great.
so we're doing for a variance to allow parking in the setback without modification of the
That's
deck.
correct.
That's what I'm hearing.
Acceptable to you.
Okay.
Yes.
Do we restrict that to a car or a small sport utility? So that down the road, if they were to sell the house, somebody's in parking commercial vehicles or large
That's
vehicles.
against.
So they can't park commercial
Yeah.
vehicles there anyway.
Yeah.
That's under our code. You can't park commercial and residential zones. It's already on the record. It's illegal.
You and I don't live in residential zone.
Yes, I do. And I'm not calling
And that's the end of your testimony?
Yeah, is there anything else, any other questions for our architect?
Another question I could ask.
Any of the board members have a question of his testimony? Or
Now, if you have questions.
if not, is there anyone in the public that has a question about any of the testimony or of any of the witnesses? Yes, sir.
I do have a question. I'm actually here on another matter, but we're the owner of 3 Willow Way, just across the lake.
Sir, can you just state your name for the
My
record?
name is David Janaza.
I'm sorry.
David Janaza.
Mr. Janaza, do you swear to tell the truth and nothing but the truth to help you God? Or for purposes of application, I should say. And can you just, once again, spell your last name for the record?
Janazzo.
And your address, please.
We live at 174 Ocean Avenue. We own a property at 3 Willow Way, which is just behind.
Behind.
Behind. Did I hear you say the access would be through Willow Way?
Well, the driveway now is off of Willow Way.
The driveway's on Ocean Avenue.
No, it's not Willow Way.
You're on the corner. Okay, I got it.
Actually, where the cars parked today is.
I thought technically where it was. You're about the corner house. Okay, got it. All right, thank you.
Anyone else in the public?
Yeah.
Not, the public portion is closed. Discussion from the board or a motion?
I'll make it. It's definitely an improvement from what's there. It makes sense. They can't improve what's already, they can't improve what's already there as testified to. So I make a motion to approve the application.
With those changes?
With the change, with the extra variance that's been requested.
And also the height.
Yeah, that has to be changed in the plans to reflect the accurate height.
So there'll be no variance for height.
Correct. And they're not asking for one. It's just the plans reflect the wrong thing.
I'll second that.
Could we have a roll call, please?
Ms. Bills?
Yes.
Mr. Cashmore?
Yes.
Chairman Cunningham?
Yes.
Mr. Julio?
Yes.
Vice Chairman DeSeo?
Yes.
Ms. Gorman?
Yes.
Councilman Wexler?
Yes.
That's it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thanks, everyone.
Moving right along to the FAN application, 164 Ocean Avenue, Block 33, Lot 20.01.
Mr. Chairman, because this stems from a use variance, I am not eligible to participate. I will step down.
Thank you.
Just for purposes of the record, this matter was re-noticed. The notice has been reviewed before county except jurisdiction as the notice is deemed appropriate.
I will need those plans.
Yeah, they have to stay.
Yeah, all those exhibits have to stay. Yeah. You can take them off the poster boards though, we don't need the poster boards. Thank you. They want to make you keep that.
How are you? You now have the floor.
Good evening. My name is Rick Scuria from Howland, Neiman and Wright. Represent the applicant here, Teresa and Martin Fan. Before we begin our testimony, we have two witnesses, our architect, Catherine Franco, and the homeowner, Teresa Fan. I just wanted to present some brief history, because this is a little unusual, the situation here.
Let's just make sure our notice is
I did
correct.
that, yeah, read it before.
Oh, you did? Okay. Thank you. Go right ahead, sir.
Sorry. The application here is for amended site plan approval and a potential bulk C variance on the property. The applicant was here before the board on February 13, 2018. The applicant at that time sought approval for a use variance and multiple bulk variances. There was a pre-existing non-conforming use of a two-family house. The applicant sought to extend the house. Because of that extension, it triggered the use variance and also triggered some bulk variances. We had testimony of the applicant, of Catherine Franco and James Higgins, the planner. That application was granted by this board. The resolution was memorialized on February 27, 2018. The neighboring property, the Condo Association, Ends Condo Association, filed an appeal of Montgomery Superior Court. Montgomery Superior Court upheld the board's decision granting the approval. Subsequently, Land's End filed an appeal with the appellate division. During the appellate division, the parties agreed with the settlement. The settlement was to make some modifications to the site plan, which the my witness here, Ms. Franco, will list. Since the settlement with the appellate division changed some terms of the site plan, we're required to go back to this board and seek approval of the amended site plan based upon the original resolution. We're coming back to have some modifications. The modifications are actually smaller. They're slightly reducing the size, creating some non-transparent barriers for some privacy and a tree buffer. And that was to work out this case with the neighboring property, Land's End, and our applicant. So right now, unless the board has any questions, I'm ready to proceed with the testimony.
Mr. Scuria, just for purposes of the board's understanding, as a part of the settlement agreement, you had to provide these plans to, was it Land's End Condo Association or Townhouse Association
Yes.
for review, correct?
Yes, I did.
And you had discussions with them, is that correct?
Yes.
And as part of the settlement agreement, there's language in here provided by the appellate division that after the review, that the association agrees not to object to any application for approval of the amended plan submitted by the applicants to the planning board. Is that also
Yes.
correct? So you feel that everything that you are coming forth to the board with is with the approval of these Land's End?
We submitted the plan to the Land's End Condo Association. The attorney was Steve Malenik, who I don't see him here today. We submitted that. We actually had to make a modification to it based upon that feedback. They approved that. There was a long wait to COVID for other reasons. That was approved by Land's End, and we also sent them a copy of this application too, so they were notified that there was no objection to the amended site plan to the terms of that. So
Their concern was the back of the house. And you removed the deck in the back of the house and
Yes.
provided privacy back there. But
Yes.
also in your resolution, it states that you're going to have a 25-foot setback. And your plans don't indicate that. You need a new variance for that. You changed it.
well, what happened is That's correct. What happened is that the stairway was not enclosed. It was halfway enclosed. So therefore, no variance was required because it was only halfway enclosed. Since we extended the non-transparent material up to the top, that's considered an enclosed structure.
That's not true. I reviewed that plan. What was next to that was the living room. The living room was the deck. Now you enclosed that deck and made it the living room larger, and you put the new deck out in front of it 8.5 feet. And then on the plan, you write the setback to be 18.4, and you're showing it to the inside of a beam. A vertical projection on any house is the setback line. I calculated you're moving the house up to 17 feet, 3 feet from, 17 foot, 3 inches from the front yard, which is not in compliance with our 25-foot setback.
Maybe if I can have Ms. Franco testify as to that, to the plans, maybe let us point that there is a that's it.
Let's go through the testimony, and then you can ask questions of Mr. Franco.
Right.
What the situation is.
Unless there are any more questions, I'm ready for it. Okay, I have Ms. Franco.
Ms. Franco, do you swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth for purposes of this application?
Yes.
Can you please state your name for the record and your professional qualifications?
Catherine Franco. I'm an architect and planner, but tonight I'm just testifying as the architect. My address is 150 Monmouth Avenue, Atlantic Highlands. I've been an architect licensed for 30 years. And I have testified in front of this board.
Without any objection from board members, we'll accept your qualifications. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Ms. Franco, can you describe the proposed application today with the applicants?
Yes. What happened was we had to remove the decks in the rear, okay? And we had, without any deck, it's hard to have living space on those 2 floors. So what we did is we brought the deck across, like you said, in front of the stair, alongside the stair.
No, in front of the stairs. The stairs were behind.
Yes. Okay, so if you look at
Do you have the old plan
original
here?
drawings.
Do you have the old plan here?
I'm sorry?
Do you have the old plan here?
Yeah, I have it right here. What I'm saying is, you push that up the 8 feet, just like you said.
Yeah, but wasn't the staircase within that 8 feet before, and the deck next to it?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, so you extended the house at 8 feet, and then you moved the staircase out 8 foot 4 inches with a new deck,
Yeah.
which projects you inside the front yard setback.
Yep.
So you're in violation of the setback requirements.
But but that was in exchange for the rear deck.
It doesn't matter. Has nothing to do with it.
I'm sorry to interrupt. We did notice for that bulk that variance approval as well for that.
You still have to maintain a 25-foot setback. You're not. You're reducing it.
You're requesting a
We're
variance.
requesting a variance.
Does Land's End know about that?
Yeah, they are.
Yes, it was. Again, that, I'm sorry to interrupt, but that, based upon the settlement and those changes, that triggered it. It was in the notice, the bulk variance as well. And maybe I didn't explain it clearly as the architect, but they did approve these plans as submitted, did realize that caused the bulk C variance. And they were notified that the plans that we have is the same plans that Land's End approved, that conforms exactly with the settlement that you called.
Why do you need to extend the front of the house into a setback?
Because
There isn't a house, we just had testimony from the last presentation that there isn't a house on Ocean Avenue that's less than 25 feet from the street. Now you want to come out 7 to 17.
I agree with you. Okay?
You
Thing
got
is,
relief.
let me finish.
You got relief from
Yes.
you got relief on all the bulk variances on that property. You got relief for everything. And now you want more and more and more.
No, actually, we'd like to go back to the original, but Land's End doesn't want that.
But they don't have nothing to do with the front deck.
In a way they do, okay? They want a certain amount of no visual, okay?
What does that have to do with the front deck?
Okay. I took away these people's back deck, okay?
And you made their living room and their den bigger.
Their den, it was always the same if you
No
look
way.
at it. Because I have, look at it.
I sat down and compared these plans.
I have the doors, and then I have the deck, okay? What I did is I enclosed the deck, and I added the 8 feet.
Yeah, to the den,
Okay.
so you made the den bigger, which I don't care
Yes.
about either.
Okay, yes. The thing is, they need a deck, okay? When you live on the second or third floor, you need a deck.
Why do you need it?
Wouldn't you want a deck down there?
But you don't need it. But I don't care about the back of the house. You made the den bigger, so you enlarged the
Okay,
size of the
let's do
house.
this. Why
In
don't
the
we
front,
just
you
push
made
the whole house
you made the
back?
living.
Hang on, one at a time.
You made the living room bigger, and you made the master bedroom bigger, and then stuck additional deck out into the setback in the front on Ocean Avenue. I think you're asking for too much.
Well, why don't we move the house back? We don't have a problem with that.
Right, you don't, you have to eliminate that back deck for land tenant purposes.
The reason they didn't want it was they didn't want noise and people partying out in the back.
We get all that. That has nothing to do with the front deck. It doesn't bother anybody, except it violates our front yard setback. And there
So
isn't a
why-
house on Ocean Avenue that's less
So
than
why don't we move the
25
house
feet.
back?
And maybe you should come back.
That's
That
what
wasn't,
the board?
that's not before the board.
It's not.
Okay.
Again, I don't mean to interject again. I get, just looking at the settlement agreement, the second part was incorporating front decks or balconies before the roof deck. That was the agreement between the parties. That caused the setback in front to go from 25 feet to 70 feet. Now this worked before the board, and the board can deny that or grant that. But that's operation of the settlement and the agreement between the parties. And trying to conform with the agreement that triggered that variance. So we are seeking here today, in addition to the amended site plans for that relief, and that I guess would be up to the board.
For the front yard setback.
Well, and just for purposes of, for the board, I don't know if you've seen this particular paragraph from the appellate division settlement agreement. So the applicant shall seek approval from the planning board for an amendment to the approval to permit the enlargement of the house based upon amended plans that eliminates the 2 rear exterior decks as shown on the original plans, or 2, incorporate any front decks or balconies below the roof deck. 3, incorporates Juliet balconies on the rear elevation of the house, changing the contour of the stairwell, thereby reducing the length as the area of the rear stairwell from the back of the house by 3 feet from the original plans. And there are a few more things with regard to trees. And
Where's it about the setbacks?
this is in the settlement agreement. This is the settlement. So if you're going back to the setbacks, that's in the original resolution. But that's the settlement agreement from the appellate. So they list that in paragraph 3 as to what they would have to seek approval for, based on the modified terms.
Just because land end says something doesn't mean we have to approve it.
I agree with that. It's the board's prerogative, and that's why we noticed that, and that's why we're, so let's just continue with the testimony, and let's just go specifically. I know we talked about it. What were the modifications from the appellate division? If we can go for each one that Lands End agreed to the modification of the original amended site plan.
The first one was eliminating the rear decks, which we did. And then we also turned the stairs 90 degrees to be flat against the building. And then create Juliet balconies, which means there's just a door at the end of the wall. Those are the ones in the back, and then adding a landscape buffer, then enclosing the stair in the front. Okay? They wanted it enclosed so you couldn't see the stairs. And that's what we did.
And just to clarify, and because of these changes to the plans that were agreed to by the parties in the settlement agreement, that triggered a front yard setback variance, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and I know we've had some discussion about that, but only explain for the record specifically how they triggered the variance and why we would see this up there in the certain questions.
Okay. What happened was, he needed, he needed the deck, clients needed that, her husband is handicapped, he needs to get on the deck. Okay? So I put the stair there, the stair had to be enclosed. So whether or not we have that balcony, I still have to enclose that stair according to the Land's End. And that's what triggered this whole project.
And the original application we submitted with the plans, that did not have that front yard setback, box, correct?
No.
And was that because the decks were in the back?
Yes. The decks were in the back, and the stair didn't have to be enclosed. Have you seen the spiral stairs that go all the way up? Open. Now we have to enclose it.
Okay. Besides those, were there any other conditions from the previous application that we changed for this amendment?
The landscaping, the decks, stair, Julia.
How many square feet did you add to the house? In living space?
See if I go.
You look at your plans.
That's just not coverage.
You made both master bedrooms on each floor larger, both living rooms on each floor larger, and each den on each floor larger.
Well, if I had the space, I was going to adjust it. So I could just leave it all as one, but I thought it better now. 192 square feet per floor.
Per floor?
No, wait, I'm sorry.
It's gotta be more than that.
No, because it's 8 by 24.
So you made the house approximately 200 square feet large, 400 square feet large, around figures.
Per floor, 200.
How much?
200 per floor.
Per floor?
Approximately.
2 floors, 400.
But if we're talking about setbacks, it only be 200.
Yeah, but I'm saying you also enlarged the house by 400 square feet and moved the house further forward into a front yard setback. I mean, maybe we should put a hotel on that property.
Why don't we just set it back?
Well, I don't know what the rest of the board thinks, but I'm not going to approve anything into a setback on Ocean Avenue. I have one of the closest houses to the street is 25 feet. That's going to look ridiculous 17 feet from the street. And it's to the curb, not to the sidewalk. Ocean Avenue is measured from the curb. There's no 5-foot setback in there. So 17 feet off this curb, we're going to have a 3-story house. If bad enough that on the side, 4 feet from the curb, we're going to have a 3-story house. I think you've gone over.
Thank you, Dave. Do you have additional testimony?
I have no more for Ms. Frank.
Well, what are your rear yard setback?
I'm sorry, say that again? We're way beyond the 7.
Can you tell me what your rear yard setback is?
We didn't want it because we're not close to it. So we're allowed the 7, but
I
we're
know,
way
I'm
beyond the
looking
7.
for it here and I'm not seeing it. Rear, it says NA.
Yeah, it's not marked, but
I mean, the rear, I know the rear yard is a long way to the back, so it's a substantial amount of room there. But, and that was a variance we were not seeking in the beginning, but.
But if you move the house back 8 foot, would you be in violation of Land's End agreement?
That's the reason they came to propose it, was that it was close to,
So-
that's why they gave her the deck and put up privacy.
Well, they got rid of the deck, but there's no deck back there,
But they wouldn't want.
so we're moving it 8 foot back.
I mean, the only
And you're
alternative,
back with the problem with them.
if the agreement between the parties was a problem, is to potentially work with Land's End and come to an agreement. The other application was approved, you're asking for amendment. I'm not sure if it reverts back then to the other application, or if this agreement has created a problem with the front yard setback just by the way the price negotiated. I'm hearing from the board, maybe this is something that we need to just discuss further and try to.
Just go back to the original plan, that's all. You would-
Plan is fine. I hate.
Without the decks.
I hate, they took away the decks. I hate to see the fans have gone through so much to rebuild one house.
The original was 25.6. Why did
No, I
they do
understand, but you're just 25 foot, we'll move it back 8 foot. It'd be possible for us to approve the application based on that stipulation and then have them go to the.
This was a court-ordered renegotiation between them and the neighbor.
I
And
understand.
if we decide to change that, that's, you're going back to court.
Well,
It's easy to figure that one out.
Yeah, I don't know if it's automatic back to court or if it's something that can be handled outside the court.
I would think, again, this is going to legal arguments.
Not without
I would think that the settlement is not complied by the appellate division, and would just go back to the appellate division.
I think you would have to, listen, it would be interesting, but you can certainly talk to Land's End about pulling it back without modifying the existing plans. You've already noticed for a variance, in the front yard setback, so there's a potential that it wouldn't be a problem. I don't know.
The big thing was the deck.
Right, I know
I'm talking
that.
about current plans as they are, because with the current plans as you have them, it could be pulled back. Is that what you're telling me?
Right.
So basically, it's taking the whole house and just as configured and moving it back.
Right, to conform to the front yard setback. So if you propose that and notice for it, perhaps that could be a potential settlement for you, because otherwise, this is all going to fall apart and it's going to go back.
Which is
Right, I think the option would just go back to the appellate division as a settlement hasn't been complied with, and we
Right.
back in the appellate division and just, I guess, really reopened.
Right.
I think. So, and then that.
Why don't you just go back to the original plan of the front of the house?
Well, because they have an agreement, so they have to go back to the.
That changes the agreement.
Yeah, so unless they have consent.
Just say leave the front of the house the same, just change the.
Well, I mean, we could just say no, too. And then they would have to do.
So I have a question. They're trying to make the deck
They took it back to the
more
fine.
because you can't have a back deck. And you want X amount of space for a deck. And the deck is pushed farther out to the street because you made the bedroom bigger and the den bigger.
Right.
So now the
I
house,
didn't make the deck bigger.
no,
The living room.
the inside of the house is bigger,
Right.
more space, so now that makes the deck come out more to the street, correct?
I'm getting the feeling that.
So why couldn't you just leave those rooms the same size?
We can. If that gets us through, we'll do it.
If you just remove the deck in the back, which was the agreement with Land's End, and leave the front of the house as it was, there's nothing to do, is it?
Well, they want the decks on the floor.
The deck will still be on the
They had a
front.
deck in
He's
the
just
front.
saying move it back.
You had decks in the front of the house, they were just a little smaller.
Yeah.
So you still have decks in the front, and you're 25 feet back from the street where you should be.
I mean, obviously, if that can be done, I don't know, that would have to be renoticed with an amended site, because we amended site.
Why
plan.
don't we, if you pass a resolution based on, they will check that it's done.
The plans have to be submitted to Land's End. If you're revising everything, you're gonna need some kind of consent, I would assume, to come back. would you like to at this time?
They would have to come back to us.
They have to come back, exactly, and that's, so, do you want to adjourn it so there's no further notice? And you always have the option to renotice if things change or your discussions fall apart, or you have to, add in something else?
I mean, since it's just saying amend the site plan, I would think if we just announce notice for the next meeting,
That's
we
what-
wouldn't have to renotice. And we could just announce it for the next meeting and then, or whatever meeting that is, we would have to update our plans.
Correct, and that's what I'm saying, we can certainly carry you, no further notice, but if something happens, where you're asking for more than what was, in our current notice, or things change, you can always have the option of renoticing, but right now, we can carry you, so at least you wouldn't bear that expense.
Right.
They would also have to renegotiate the
I don't
settlement.
know, what, that's what's like,
The settlement agreement required them to satisfy the rear of the house,
No, I
which they did. They're finished. Should have left the front of the house alone.
Also the front, but it also
The settlement agreement also states that the front of the house will have decks below the deck.
You do have decks. You had decks there. There were decks
they
there.
want it also enclosed. I'm just going to take
It
off
also
the
says somewhere
8 feet, and we're
25
going to push
feet,
it back.
Well, no. So it just seems like from the board that there are alternatives that could satisfy just by moving the house or repositioning, that can satisfy both lands
I
and,
think if you move the house back, you're going to upset the land.
well, that's a
I think
discussion.
you should just eliminate the deck in the front and keep the two decks you have out there and leave it the way it was.
Well, that's what he has.
But I'm not allowed to advise you.
Well, it's not
I'm
advice.
taking your advice. I'm trying to take your advice because
He needs the opportunity to take a look at the situation.
yeah, I just guess by legally, local music, if the parties couldn't agree on something, then it would just, I guess, be reopened in the appellate division with the original approval, and then it would just continue based upon the original plans, or we come back on notice, and if we can agree on an amended site plan and configure it and have a written agreement updated.
I think the real issue is the trigger 25-foot setback. So if there's something you can do to eliminate that potential variance, then you'd be able to move forward.
Right.
Okay? So do you want
Yeah, I think based upon the comments from the board, I've been waiting a long time, but it's probably the best thing. Let's see what to do.
to continue,
To
carry.
carry it, and the notice can be made today. And
We have an opening.
We have not in December.
It's not in December, so
Going to go into the first meeting in January.
have you already published calendar next year or no?
Not yet.
No, so why don't we carry them to the reorganization meeting, and at that point, we
We've
can
got
assign you a date.
111.
Yeah, okay. So, with your consent, we would carry you to January 11th of 2022. So anybody who's in the audience who has concerns about this, please know that moving forward, there will be no further public notice on this. It's not required. The next hearing date will be January 11th of 2022 at 7:30. Please check the website for further updates or on the situation. Thank you.
Thank you all for coming.
We don't get to say anything?
Well,
Wouldn't it be nice for them to know how to do it?
No, we'll have a public portion
Public.
in general to the meeting.
once the meeting concludes, you'll be, for the next hearing, that we're going to welcome the public up to make public comments at that time, because at this point, they have not concluded their testimony or their application. So the appropriate time for public comments will be at that time.
Just a question of two frames in my example. The question on the procedure. Do they have to come back to us for another
I can talk.
agreement?
He's going to talk to you off the record.
Or I can talk to you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You'll talk to our attorney.
Is there any other business before the board this evening? Is there anyone in the public that has business before the board this evening? Not on that matter. If not, the public portion is closed. We have a motion to adjourn. Meeting adjourned. Thank you all for coming.